Moses lived his whole life thinking he was going to deliver the people of Israel from Egypt and take them into the promised land. At this point, right here, right now, God says, no longer you're not the man. That has to be one of the most disappointing things in a person's life. You have to get in touch with this disappointment. Moses was by himself in the wilderness for 40 years, doing sheep. Then he was another 40 years with the children of Israel. He was waiting all his life, 80-some years, to lead them to this promised land so he can relax and enjoy the favor of God. But it was at this point God said, no, that's not for you. Moses' greatest disappointment. Who was Joshua? Remember, Joshua was Moses' understudy, right? Let me just give you a few. In Exodus, this was Joshua's role. He was an aide to Moses, and he was waiting on Moses. When you go to the book of Numbers, you begin to see Joshua speaking up, exploring. He goes into the promised land. He said he will enter the promised land. There's nothing yet quite about leadership. It says, in various verses that Joshua survived. And it said this important thing. It said Joshua was in the Spirit. So this is the kind of man Joshua was. He was in the Spirit, and he followed the Lord wholeheartedly. Then we move on to the book of Deuteronomy, and you can see that Joshua is still assisting, but now he's starting to come up into a leadership role. And then obviously the book of Joshua is about Joshua leading the children of Israel into the promised land. Joshua, you can see his life. He waits, he follows, he leads, and then he conquers. Many of us who have a lot of vision, a lot of dreams, we want to hop right into it and just take the world, don't we? I mean, at least I did. That's me. But I had to learn the aspect of what it was to wait, to follow, and then to lead and conquer. That's a different setting. But so Joshua, he was a warrior at heart. Moses, I find, was an intercessor. Joshua was a warrior at heart. And he led the children of Israel into the promised land. And if you read the account of leading into the promised land, there's a lot of war. There's a lot of conquering. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I think Joshua's greatest disappointment, I won't read this passage, but Joshua, when he's taking these people, taking the land, the promised land, a group of people came up to him and deceived him and said, hey, we're from a faraway land, don't kill us. And it says there that Joshua did not inquire of the Lord to see who these people really were because they were trying to deceive him. And then Joshua made what they call an unholy alliance with a nation that he should have destroyed. And that unholy alliance continued to haunt the children of Israel throughout their stay in the promised land. So I think Joshua's greatest disappointment was he didn't listen and inquire of the Lord, and he did something apart from God, and he paid the consequences. But I think his greatest joy, and I'm going to read this, was in Joshua 1, verse 1 through 9. It says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan into the land I am about to give you. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I has promised Moses. Remember this, as I promised Moses, you're going to get the promise. Your territory will extend. It just goes so on and so forth. And it said nobody will be able to stand against you. So the greatest joy for Joshua, he gets to go into the promised land. No more running. You're the one who's going to be the strong nation. So I believe that was Joshua's greatest joy. Amen? Isn't it fun to when you try to do something and you see it work and it happens? I mean, that's amazing. I love that. I remember I always revert to to football, and I know half of you guys don't relate, but I don't care. I remember my first touchdown pass. I mean, it was a culmination of all this work going through Hell Week in August, 3 practices a day. And I remember the first game, They called my number. I was so nervous in the huddle. We're going to you, Olson. I was like, oh, yeah, it's my turn. You're lining up out there, you know what I'm saying? In the crowd of 100 people watching. That was a lot to a young guy. And you're sitting there like this, he's lining up, and just all this stuff inside, it's coming to me. The ball's coming to me. Quarterback, it's all slow motion. Blue 5. Blue 5. Sit. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey. Woo. Catch. Touchdown. Oh, my gosh. You don't know the joy. I was so excited, right? I tried to do one of those fancy, and I raised the ball up to spike it, and it slipped out of my hand. And so I was like, oh, yeah, that's what I want to do. But you understand, it was, for me, it was one of the greatest joys. It was like this promised land for me. All the work, all the culmination, all the waiting, all the suffering, all the heartache, all the pain. And then finally, 2-3 months after, for me, touchdown. For Joshua, some 40, I don't know how many years for him, I just lost track. But promised land, you see the joy. It's amazing. His greatest joy. God's plans always work themselves out. Dreams come true, don't they? Moses did deliver the children from the bondage of slavery. As a dream come true. Joshua entered into the promised land. A dream come true. And if I can share for myself, this church for me has been a dream come true. It's been amazing. Just starting a fairly young church, a multi-ethnic church, a church in a coffee house, focusing on mentoring and evangelism and practicing the presence of God. This is what I set out to do when we were still in Switzerland some 7-8 years ago. And so for me, I get to sit here and look at you and some of the people who aren't here, knowing them and saying, this is a dream come true for me. It's amazing. I did what I was called to do. Amen? But there's always a price to pay for every dream. If you dream and you want to do something significant with your life, there is a price to pay. So if you want that dream, understand it does cost something. I hate that bumper sticker. It says, what is it? Forgiveness is for free or something like this. There's a bumper sticker. Basically, it alludes to, hey, it's easy to be a Christian because everything's free in Jesus. And I always thought, that's really not true, is it? It cost Jesus a lot, didn't it? This salvation that we have, if you know God, if you're walking with God, costs, it was a great price paid. So as God gives you a dream, there's going to be a price to pay. Moses made a mistake, didn't he? He struck the rock. Most people say he struck the rock out of anger. And what did it cost him? What was the price? He didn't go into the promised land. There was his price. Joshua, he made an unholy alliance, didn't he? And what did it cost him? Many people were hurt and killed along the way.